Okay, Shrini,
Haryamana.
Hari Om, chant Pandrema.
Chandra manaso jataha chaksho suryo ajayata mukhadindraschagnischa pranad vayurajayata nabhya asid antariksham shirshnodyau samavartata padbhyambho merti shashrotraat tatha lokagum akalpayan.
Very nice. Once more. Chandrama.
Chandra manaso jataha chaksho suryo ajayata mukhadindraschagnischa pranad vayurajayata nabhya asid antariksham shirshnodyau samavartata padbhyambho mertishashrotraat tatha lokagum akalpayan.
Lovely. Very nice. So I'll what we will do is Srini's chanting is very, can hear that he's practiced Vedic chanting.
Yeah, it's spontaneous.
So it's very
the voice correct voice modulation எல்லாமே வந்து ரொம்ப நாளா அமைஞ்சிருக்கு அவருக்கு.
correct.
ரொம்ப நாளா
Srini voice correct, and then modulation correct. We'll do it very nicely.
modulation.
Very nice.
So கல்பக்கா வெயிட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம் இந்த மாதிரி பாராட்டுறதுக்கு.
எங்களுக்கும் பாராட்டணும்னு ஆசைதான், எங்களுக்கும் பாராட்டணும்
சான்ஸ் கிடைக்கல.
Okay, so yes, last week we saw how from the different parts of Purusha, the various the varnas came out. Brahmano osya mukham asit bahu rajanyah kritah uru tadasya yad vaishyah padbhyam shudro ajayata. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra came from the different parts of the Purusha. And again, we said we are not trying to analyze how did these come out of the Purusha. Rather, we are trying to superimpose that Purusha on us and trying to visualize that these are those aspects within us and these are those faculties within us which are highlighted in different parts of our body. The same thing now he goes further on to say na chandrama manaso jataha chaksho suryo ajayata mukhadindraschagnischa pranad vayurajayata. Chandrama manaso jataha. So from his mind, the manas of Purusha comes out Chandra. Chandrama manaso jataha. The mind is coming out of where does, because when you're talking about faculties, if you look at Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra are different aspects within us, right? We discussed that. They are not necessarily Varna based on somebody's birth or based on the community that you're born into, but these are, everybody has a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, Vaishya and a Shudra within them, right? And we work with each of these faculties to try and for the well-being of the individual. So you use all of these four for the well-being of this individual, that I am Purusham, Purushaha aham asmi, Purusho soham asmi, aham asmi, Purushaha asmi, Saha asmi, that I am, Purushaha asmi, I am that Purusha. So you should remember this, that Purusha that we are talking about is this cosmic consciousness, but this is that the Brahmanda that is there that we are referring to is also this Pindanda. Pindanda means this Pinda Anda, which small form of universe which is within me is a reflection of the macrocosm. Okay, so we have to constantly remember that as much as we feel governed by this great cosmic being, we should also remember that we are being governed from within us. See, when a principal walks across the corridor, suddenly the children will become quiet in school. Because the principal is watching, right? At other times, they'll be doing all kinds of masti. The principal is seen, or some teacher or from some senior professor is seen, suddenly they'll become quiet. Because till then, the mind thinks that nobody is seeing me. So the mind thinks that nobody is seeing me, hence I can do whatever I feel like, whichever way. The moment somebody is seeing me, I become okay, I become watchful. I become careful in what I do, how I do. So if you know that somebody is always watching you, how will you be? That is the question. This Purusha they're saying is always watching you like CCTV. Wherever you are, there is a CCTV there, and someone is always watching you. How will you behave? Now, that behavior is something that we need to develop. It is not, it's not becoming constrained, it's becoming conscious. The difference between feeling constrained, actually, if somebody puts CCTV everywhere in our house, we'll feel constrained. We don't want that. We will say it is intrusion into my privacy. But when you know there is a principle that is constantly watching, that is being conscious. Right? Whether you like it or not, it's watching. It is watching means it is not watching like the way we watch something. It is watching means it is aware, constantly aware of everything that we do. And later in life, we say, "Na enna tappu panna enak idallam kadaikkirudhu." Oh, of course. It's just the problem is we don't know what are those things that we do which triggers the things that we experience later. We don't know. The connection is what we don't know. And to understand the connection, we go to a guru, a teacher, a josier, this person, that person, whatever, you go to 200 people to understand the connection between these two. And more so, we are not interested in the connection. We just want to resolve the problem that we have. The connection has to be understood in a very intuitive way. And if you understand that connection, then the next action that I do will be of a conscious nature. Because I know what it will lead to, right? So in the same way, this Purusha that we're talking about is something that is operating from within me. It is constantly monitoring, watching, and recording every action. And in that case, we become conscious. We become more and more conscious. So he's saying Chandrama Manaso Jataha. So from the same Purusha, from whom the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra came, from the same Purusha, now the mind of the Purusha comes Chandra, which means it's showing the link between the Manas and the Chandra. And which we have seen even in most of the literature, you will see the mind is linked to the moon. In fact, in Latin, Chandra or moon is called as Luna, right? Those who are familiar with this, in Latin, it is called Luna. In French also, I think it's called Luna, Luna. And people who go mad are called lunatics, right? The word comes, lunatics come from Luna. So which means even in that culture, there is a link between the mind and so lunatic is somebody whose mind has gone unstable. And why is the word lunatic used where Luna means moon? Because the moon has a very close relationship to the mind. And even here in Purusha Sukta, it is mentioned, Manas Chandra Ma Manaso Jataha, from the mind comes the moon. Which means there is this relationship between the moon and the mind. The phases of the moon has an impact on the mind, the way the mind behaves. So, Chandrama Manaso Jataha Chaksho Suryo Ajayata. From the eyes, Surya comes out. So we have to reverse this. Whatever is saying, from the mind, moon came. From the eyes, the sun came. One way is if Amar Chitra Kathala, if you have to draw a diagram, you will draw a nice drawing saying there is this Purusha standing here. From the mind comes the moon. From the eyes comes the sun. From the Nabhi comes the space. That is how you will draw it. If you have to draw. But For a spiritual sadhaka, for somebody who is wanting to want to introspect, you have to reverse this. Chandrama manaso jataha is correct, but what we are saying is the Chandra has an impact on the mind. The way we see it that way. And there is a link between the Chandra and the mind. In the same way, Chaksho Suryo Ajayata, from the eyes, the Surya has come, means the Surya has an influence on the eyes. So within the eyes, the Surya is there. In the mind, the Chandra is there. Yeah, I was telling my sister, I was talking to somebody the other day, my sister, someone. I was telling this, in philosophy, there is this concept called Arambhavada. Arambhavada. Arambhavada means that if something has to begin, it has to already exist. Sorry. This philosophy means that if something has to, like for example, if curd has to come out of milk, curd has to exist in milk in some form or the other. It is just the process of curdling that creates the curd, but curd has to exist. So which means you cannot make milk, you cannot make curd out of oil, for example. Whatever you do, whatever you try, you cannot make curd out of oil. Why? Because it doesn't exist in the first place. She's saying Chandrama manaso jataha chaksho suryo ajayata, which means if these are coming out from the mind, from the eyes, which means it is existing already there. So the moon exists in some form or the other. The Brahmanda moon exists in a certain form in my mind, which is the Pindanda. Right? So which is why you can, when you do dhyanam on the moon, your mind comes to a certain place of restfulness. Those who know the story of Abhirami Bhattar. Abhirami Bhattar, the story where he sings to Mother Abhirami, and then she comes out, she appears in the sky and then throws her tatanka and becomes a moon. This appears, in fact, it doesn't appear only to him, it appears to everybody in the city there. So which means he is, through his meditation, through his power of his mind, he is able to invoke the moon. Abhirami coming and throwing is what Abhirami Bhattar sees. But what everybody sees is the moon is appearing. So if you just link it that way, saying through his mind, the ability of his mind, he is able to invoke the moon. Even in Lalita Sahasranama, what is that line, Raghu? Chandrama.
Rama Rakendu Vadana.
Not that one.
Parinata Sharat.
Chandrama. What does that go?
Which one?
No,
Parinata Sharat Chandra.
her forehead. No, her forehead is like the Chandrama.
Ashtami Chandra Vibhraj.
Ashtami Chandra Vibhraj. Ashtami Chandra Vibhraja Dalikasthala Shobhita. So her forehead is like the Ashtami Chandra. And forehead is where you represent the mind. The mind is here only, right? For us, the mind is here. And her forehead is like the moon, the Ashtami Chandra. That is another reference. Now, about the Surya, he says, Chaksho Suryo Ajayata. From the eyes comes Surya, which means the eyes, the power to see is essentially linked to light. Right? And Surya is the source of all light. So which means the power to see is also coming from Surya. The power to see comes from Surya. So when you say Chakshu Suryo Vajayata, from the eyes come the Surya, which means Surya is the one that is powering the eyes and giving the ability to see. So like how you meditate upon the moon, your mind stabilizes. You meditate upon the sun, your vision becomes clearer. The ability to see becomes much better. Your clarity in vision, your clarity of thought and perception, your ability to perceive something becomes much more clearer. We did the whole Aditya Hridayam. right? So in Aditya Hridayam also you will see where there is a reference that you perceive, your ability to perceive becomes much sharper when we pray to Surya Bhagavan. So you've got the Chandra and the Surya. Chandrama manaso jatah chaksho suryo ajayata. Mukhadindraschagnischa pranad vayurajayata. Mukha, from the mukhat, Indraha and Agni come. Okay. So Mukha has two meanings. Mukha, what are the two meanings of Mukha? One is the face, the other is mouth. Right? You can also say face or the mouth. So he says from the face comes the Indriyas or the Indra. Mukhat, Indraha, and then Agnihi cha. Mukhat, Indraha, Agnihi cha. Which means from the face or from the Mukha comes Indra and Agni. So where does Indra come from? Comes from the face, which means your sensory perception or your where are your indriyas? The jnanendriyas. Jnanendriyas, the eyes, the nose to smell, the mouth to taste, the ears to listen, and the skin to touch. All the five jnanendriyas reside in the mukha. So he says the Indra comes from the mukha and Agni comes from the speech. Pak Agni. Right? Vak is also known as Agni. So when there is speech, there is Agni residing in the speech, and there are Indriyas residing in your face. So he's saying Mukhad Indraschagnischa Pranad Vayurajayata. Prana, from Prana comes Vayu, which means Vayu, Prana resides in the Vayu and Vayu resides in the Prana. So for us, what we experience as Vayu is air, but where is Prana? What is the relationship between Prana and Vayu? Prana is the essential, what you call as the vital air. But Vayu is the vehicle that carries Prana. So which is why when we turn off Vayu for us, our Prana also starts there is no supply of Prana.
Like fish and water.
Like fish and water. But fish and water, that is more like, see, Prana is what we are talking about. Is what fish does is fish consumes dissolved oxygen. It also takes oxygen, but it consumes dissolved oxygen from the water. It doesn't know how to take oxygen from the air. So that is in terms of the breathing itself. See, which is why breath and prana has to be understood separately slightly, although it's very closely tied, but they are not the same. A lot of rishis have been able to practice without breathing, still their prana is active, right? They don't die. There are siddhas who have attained to be able to, and even if you notice within you, if you are able to slowly practice this breathing through yoga, whatever techniques you do, you can hold your breath to a period of time until which you don't need the external breath for prana to operate. Right? So one way of looking at it is there is enough oxygen in your system for combustion and the whole the physiological activities to occur. So you then gasp for air when you run out of that oxygen within your system. But what about those siddhas who've been able to practice without the need for breathing to consume whatever they need? They probably can consume it through the skin. You don't need to breathe. So breath and prana are very closely linked for us, but not necessarily, they are not the same. So prana is the subtle air. Like we say, Surya is in the eyes means what? Chakshuhu are the eyes. But there is an indriya which is chakshu, which is the indriya, which is the eyes. And that indriya is the power that powers the eyes that you see. So what you see here is called golaka. This part is called golaka. But the indriya or the power of sight, there are people who have eyes but still can't see, right? Because the power of sight.
உபனிஷத் கூட இருக்கு இல்லையா, இந்த மந்திரம் கூட இருக்கு இல்லையா, ஸ்ரோத்ரஸ் ஸ்ரோத்ரம்
Shrotra, Keno Upanishad.
மனசோ மனோ
Manaso Manaha, correct. There is a Keno Upanishad. I am the eyes behind the eye. I am the ear behind the ear. I am the nose. The nose behind the nose, in a way. And then I am the mouth behind the mouth.
and eyes behind the eyes.
Eyes behind the eyes. So this is to indicate that the eyes that you see on the outside is not the true eye. There is an eye behind it which is powering this eye. So which in Keno Upanishad says that is me. But the context of the prana vayu or the prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, these are 5 vayus we know of. But there are many vayus. There are dasha prana. We know of pancha prana, but if you break it further down, there are dasha pranas. And then there are furthermore, so we subdivide the pranas depending on which part of the body, where it flows, etc., and what is the function that it does. There are many different kinds of pranas. One of the most, when it classified, it's usually classified into 10, and the most commonly known are 5. So this prana, vayuhu ajayata, which means from this prana comes, of the Purusha comes vayu, which means the source of vayu is in my prana. Or again, we have been reversing in all these verses, right? So which means through the vayu I obtain prana. My prana is associated with vayu that way. But as we said, breath and prana are interlinked, but they are not the same. So in a way, if I am able to know, if I meditate upon my prana, then I can de-link myself from vayu. Because from my prana only vayu came out. So there is vayu in my prana. Why do I need the external vayu for this prana? You understand the way to. So if I am sufficiently, again, we would never attempt doing these things, obviously, trying to take up to these siddhis. But it is good to understand that dependency is not a necessary dependency. It is that dependency is there in our physical condition. It's a constraint. But then for one who can transcend, Kalpaka is saying it's too complicated. So
in recent time, Jaggi Vasudev experimented himself with the scientists, and he proved that he was declared dead for some time, and they were doing all sorts of things to wake him up, and they were striking hard in his knee and all. Then after that he came into consciousness. So he proved that without breath also he can survive. It is in the YouTube also.
Actually, there are many. You're right. So I've not seen this particular video, but I've seen many records and evidence, records of many such scientific experiments where from a medical standpoint, the life is left out, but then the individual is in a state of, he is not dead. He is not clinically, the person may be dead, but the person is still in control of the prana. So what we are trying to say here is this prana that is, and again, Kalpaka, the important message from here is not to essentially try and do all of this, right? This is to know that through your breathing, through your controlling or not controlling, through the pranayama, through the regulation of the breath, we can bring certain things into our realm of control. That is what we need to understand. So, saying prana vayu rajayata means when prana comes vayu, the ability to have a certain control on the elements is within me. The only problem is we need to understand. The only problem is we don't have sufficient practice and siddhis to do it. But doesn't mean that everything from the outside is influencing us. See, that is what we need to take from here. When you're saying Chandrama manaso jatah suryo chaksho ajayata mukhad indraschagnischa pranad vayurajayata vayurajayata. When I'm saying all of these, when we are chanting these, we are not to associate that from this Purusha these things came out. That is certainly the pictorial representation of it. But what we are trying to do is trying to say that all of these elements that are there, that are in me, and through me, I can control the influences of them. Right? See, on a normal given day, if you're standing out in the heat, you will not be able to stand out. Chumma, ayyo, veyilla, it's so hot. Why stand out in the heat? But we stood in Hanuman Gadi. When we went to Ayodhya in Hanuman Gadi, that queue, we were standing there. And it was so hot. It was so hot. We were standing there. We were sweating. We were putting, wet towel on our head and all of that. We were standing there. Right? So what has happened there? The same Surya Bhagavan on a normal day, on another given day, if you have to go out and stand like that, you will not be able to stand. Through your sankalpa, you are able to withstand something. Through a sankalpa, you are able to do something, and you're saying that any of these things are not going to be an obstacle to me. How do you do that? Through your sankalpa. And which is what we are telling. Our sankalpa is far greater than these external agencies, because in a way the external agencies correspond to something within me.
இப்போ எனக்கு ஒரு சின்ன டவுட் வருது. இந்த சங்கல்பாங்கிறது தான் நீங்க வந்து லைக் நான் என்ன நினைக்கிறேன்னா இட் இஸ் லைக் அன் அக்செப்டன்ஸ். சூரியன் வந்து உஷ்ணமா தான் இருக்கும் அப்படின்ற அந்த அக்செப்டன்ஸ் வந்தாச்சுனாக்கா you really don't focus on the heat, or you don't really feel on the heat, because we know that the nature of heat is to be hot, and
Correct.
sun is going to be hot.
Correct.
Yeah. அப்போ அததான் சங்கல்பம் சொல்றீங்களா எப்படி?
See, sankalpam is two ways. Different people take it up differently. Some is, for me, even if I burn here right now, I want to see Hanuman. So that is one kind of sankalpa.
Madhura darshan.
Madhura
darshan, Krishna darshan.
Mathura darshan. Okay. So if you're saying that even if I am going to, Surya Bhagavan is going to heat me, burn me down right now, I am going to go and see Hanuman, because that is, I've held that sankalpa. That is one way. The other sankalpa is whether I get to see Hanuman or not. I'm here standing in the queue to see Hanuman. That is the sankalpa that I've made. But then comes your point, we're saying it doesn't matter whether it's hot, or if it is going to rain, or if it is there's going to be pollution, any kind of obstacle I am not going to let it affect me, because as you're saying, that is the nature of that.
அதான் அதான் கரெக்ட். அந்த சங்கல்பத்தினால அந்த அக்செப்டன்ஸ் வந்துடுது.
Sankalpam,
Because-
not acceptance. At the end of it, either ways, you get an acceptance to say that. But the only thing is, in the second one, it's a little. What will happen is, even if you don't get to see Hanuman, you'll still be fine. But in the first one, I've taken so much Sankalpa. I want to see, even if you do this, I want to see Hanuman. So that becomes so strong. And if you don't see Hanuman, then there is a huge amount of, you'll come back in a very, very bitter this thing. The Hanuman close.
அந்த சங்கல்பம் பண்ணும்போது இந்த see some kind of a devotion where there will be a prasada from Bhagavan. And when it's a prasada, however it may be, அவர் கதை முடிந்தாலும் சரி, அங்க பார்க்க முடியலாம் சரி, அந்த இடத்துக்கு போயிட்டு வந்தோம் அப்படிங்கிற அந்த ஒரு அக்செப்டன்ஸ்.
கரெக்ட். அப்சல்யூட்லி.
அம்மன் கோயில் தீ மிதிக்கிறாள், அதே மாதிரி தீ மிதிக்கிறா. அந்த மாதிரி இப்போ அம்மன் கோயில் எல்லாம் ஆடி மாசத்துல தீ மிதிக்கிறது அந்த மாதிரிலாம் இருக்கு.
I think, yeah. So absolutely right. So the point is, if you're making a sankalpa, you also, like Mama, you're saying that resolve should come to a certain place of calm within us. It should not be an agitation. The sankalpa should not generate an agitation. It should generate a calm to say that I acknowledge, I accept, I've come here. The possibility for me to come and stand there in the kshetra itself is his prasada. So I'm standing there, I'm going to go. And yes, like you're saying, there will be pollution, there will be people cutting into the queue, there will be Surya Bhagavan's Ushnam that will be there. All of these will be there. But despite that, that's the nature of things. But despite that, I am going to stand because this is my sadhana, this is my sankalpa, right? And in fact, it's also said, and this is probably something for us to also think about when we go for yatras, is in yatras, in particularly these consecrated spaces, it is said that going and seeing that idol is of the smallest importance. The importance is to be on that soil in that area. Wherever in that area we are, we get to that area, we can sit wherever, and we sit and do dhyana. Around that radius of that space, the energy of that particular deity or particular energy form, the expanse will be there for a certain radius. So a lot of times, even if we are sitting at the doorway, at the entrance, or at the gate, or at the steps, wherever, if you're able to sit there and spend that time, that in itself is as effective. Because kshetras are usually, which is why it's called a kshetra. Kshetra means a place, not necessarily the sanctum sanctorum. That whole place is a kshetra, right? So anyway, so coming back to this, prana vayu rajayata, which means from prana comes vayu, means you use all of these as tools for you to tools for your whatever sankalpa you have taken as. So which means your breath, you can manage your breath, the way you see things, the way you think, the way your indriyas are functioning. So look at all those things that have come here. Manaso chandrama manaso jataha. So your mind is here. Chaksho suryo ajayata, the way you see and perceive things. Then mukhadindras chagnischa, all the indriyas which are here, and the agni that is coming out of your mouth. Okay, so in this particular mukhadindras chagnischa is considered all the pancha jnanendriyas and one karmendriya. Because this is one karmendriya that can cause havoc. The indriya, which is your vak indriya, can cause havoc. So saying this, recognize there is Agni sitting here. So whenever you're speaking something about anybody or to anybody, remember you're sending out fire. Now whether that fire should burn them or give them warmth, This will depend on your intention and your level of sadhana. That is why Durvasa was considered to be one of the most feared one, because the moment he gets angry, he'll say something, it will happen. Of course, because he was a great Shakta and a great Bhakta of Bhagavan and Devi, it will end up in a good place later. That is because of his tapas. And only he was the one who was given the boon that as many, usually when somebody does tapas and they give a curse, their tapas phalam comes down. But only for Durvasa, it wouldn't. He can keep going around and doing that. But he would do it with so much responsibility, right? It is that. But it is not only for Durvasa. Understand, all of us carry that. We have to be very careful in the way we speak. And we did this whole Shamala Dandakam. We do so many other Devi works. We recognize this. There is Agni in the speech. And when that Agni is going out, we remember we may be telling something to somebody, or we may be telling something about somebody also. See, even if you're not telling it to them directly, we may be telling about them. That is also generating Agni. And all of these Agnis are going out, we think. We think they're going out, or we think sometimes it may not be causing harm to anybody. It may cause harm to someone, but it will cause harm to us. It will definitely cause harm to us. And then this is the connection I'm talking about. We don't understand what is this connection. Why am I suffering? Why am I going through this? We don't understand that because these are things that we do unconsciously. Not knowing that there is Purusha that is there within, it is just matching. It is matching your actions, your words, your thoughts, your deeds, all of that to some result outcome. We don't know the matching. We don't understand the source of the outcome. Why did this outcome come? From which karma? We don't know. But it's definitely there. The moment we recognize this as an established truth, absolutely an established truth without an iota of doubt, that this is how the karmic play is, then we will, at no time we will think that I'm being unfairly treated. So, Chandrama manaso jataha, chaksho suryo ajayata, mukhadindraschagnischa pranad vayurajayata. So everything around this area has got to be, this is the Brahmana samukhamasit. So this is the Brahmana that is there. Everything from here, ensure that this is taken care of well, which means if you take care of this space well, you can control the whole cosmos. Okay, you can control the Surya, the Chandra, the Prana, Vayu, the Indras, all the Indras, the Devata, right? Devendra, he controls all the other the functions that are the natural forces, and Agni. All of this can be in your control. In your control means you will not get impacted by that. So our mind comes to a state, like Mama was saying, of acceptance, of acknowledging there is dharma. The way it works, it is the dharma of the Surya to give light and heat. It is the dharma of water to give flow and make it wet. You understand and you are in alignment with dharma within and outside, then there is absolutely no conflict. You will understand the way these things work. And then there'll be no restlessness. There'll be no conflict. And that is what the Pindanda and the Brahmanda is bringing it together. The Rishi is bringing that together to say that once we understand these within, there'll be no conflict on the outside. All right.
Nandati, nandati, nandatyeva.
Ananditi, anandati, ama. Anandatyeva. Super. Om Kayena Vacha Manasendriyerva Buddhyatmana va Prakrite Swabhavat Karomi Yatyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanayeti Samarpayami सदाशिवायेति समर्पयामि, जगदम्बिकायेति समर्पयामि, सद्गुरुनाथायेति समर्पयामि। हरि ओम तत्सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। यस्य भ्रमणि रमते चित्तम नंदति नंदत्येव.
இது சொன்னதுக்கு இன்னொரு ரீசன் இருக்கு. பஜகோவிந்தம் வந்து கல்பகா பாடி தான் நாங்க கேட்டுட்டு இருக்கோம். ஷாப்லா தண்டகம்லாம் இருக்கு இன்னும்.
இந்த லிஸ்ட் நம்ம ஞாபகப்படுத்திட்டே இருக்கலாம் மாமா. நம்ம வித்வுட் ஷேம்லெஸ்லி we will keep reminding. சரி, ஹரியோம்.
ஹரியோம் ஹரியோம்
சரி
ராம் ராம்.
ராம் ராம்.